everyone. I'm on my way back from a vacation and decided to do another video of my birth story with Jackson. Sorry. Gosh, with Nolan. I always call Jackson Nolan, and now I'm calling Nolan Jackson. Anyway, so Nolan was born on June 13th, 2007 at 6:30 a.m. And I'm going to be posting some of his year videos. If I haven't already, I will be soon. His yearly birthday videos. I was almost, if I remember correctly, almost a week early with him. No, I think I was right on my due date. God, those little details I don't remember. How sad is that? Guess I gotta get the baby book out and refresh up, huh? Fresher course. Oh, my hair looks like poop. I just took it down from a ponytail, so. Okay, back on schedule. Let's try to stay organized. So, I do know with him that I had plans to be induced because I was at my due date. I don't remember if it was a little early or it was a little late. It was just somewhere right around my due date. And my doctor was like, okay, well, if you're, last time I saw her, said if I don't see you by this time, let's induce on this day. And so she called the night before and confirmed, or 2 nights before, and confirmed, you're going to be induced, you need to be at the hospital at this time, and yada, yada, yada. So we were going to do that. But of course, the night before my induction, at literally 12 o'clock, straight up and down, for some reason, all my kids, except for Jackson, because he was stubborn, came at 12 o'clock, straight up and down. It didn't come. My contractions and full-blown labor kicked in. I remember laying in bed and just sitting up. And as soon as I sat up knowing something was off. But as soon as I sat up from a dead sleep, I felt like a pin prick right in the center of my cervix. Prick. And I was like, God, this is it. This is it. And at this time, Miles was about 20 months. And I had my hospital bag packed, and I had his bag packed because he was going to be going to stay half with my in-laws and half with my mother while we were in the hospital, and then to give us a day or so home with the baby without having all the kids. Just, bonding time and relaxing time. So I had to pack his bag. But of course, no matter how much you pack to begin with, you're always going to have things to grab at the last minute. So I woke my husband up right when we were ready, and his job, he had his jobs and I had my jobs, and we were headed to the hospital. There was no timing anything. As soon as I felt that pinprick, my contractions were coming. They were coming hard, and I was literally within 10 or 15 minutes after having those first contractions, since after waking up, to the point when the contractions were coming so hard that I was bent over, goodness, holding on to something, moaning, barely been able to even, I couldn't walk through them, I couldn't breathe through them, they were hurting from the beginning of being in labor. However, with him, I had contractions for weeks and weeks. I remember just laying in bed, not being able to do anything because my contractions were just horribly uncomfortable. And so Miles and I would just sit in bed and read books and play puzzles, and and I just watched shows, and we really were bedbound for a couple weeks. So, and the last time the doctor checked me, I was 4 centimeters, just like I was. What happened to my light? Goodness. I was 4 centimeters, just like I was with Jackson. I was 4 centimeters, in the last couple weeks. So, we got everything loaded up, and by the time we're all loaded up and we get to the hospital, it was probably about 1:30 in the morning. Now, we only lived about 15 minutes. Goodness, this is not staying. I have a really bad hair tie up there right now. I'm gonna get run over by a semi. I didn't realize that lane was ending. I was saying, we had about a 15-minute drive to the hospital, but we were going to, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were going to meet us at the hospital, and they were going to take Miles. So we didn't have to worry about dropping him off anywhere, didn't have to worry about taking him in when we were registering, and, well, we were already pre-registered, but, just, they were meeting us there. So I labored in the car for about 10 minutes because, of course, they took longer than us because they lived further away. We waited there for about 10 minutes and did the switch. Made the last final plans, see you in this bit and we'll keep you updated, yada, 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 all the little conversations that you're doing as I'm sitting there in pain. So we get into we walk into the hospital, and same hospital I delivered Miles at. And I already knew the drill. They're going to take you into the triage room, I think that's what it's called. They're going to assess you, make sure that you're in labor, and then you'll be moved to a labor room. However, when we got to the hospital, by the time that they had, got everybody's files, did all that, and they were moving you to the room, it was probably close to 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock in the morning. There was one person that walked in front of me, there was one person right behind me, and we were all, almost yelling through our contractions, screaming. We were all in super duper labor. They did not take a single one of us to the checking room, the triage room, or wherever they, it's the room where they take the surgery people or whatever, to recover, the recovery room. They took us straight to our rooms, and you could hear the yells echoing through the hallway. And if I was one of the moms that were going all natural and just wanted calm and peace, and hearing 3 of us yelling, echoing through the hallway, I would have been a little upset because it would have been broken all my concentration. So by this time, they're getting me all hooked up on the monitors. And, they have to monitor you for a little while before they allow you to go off the monitors and, labor around your room. They asked me if they checked me, and I was 8 centimeters. So by the time we were in our room, we were all hooked up, and they were checking me to, filling out the questionnaires that they have to take. It was about 2:30. And I was 8 centimeters. So they said, do you want an epidural? Because if you want an epidural, you need to do it now or you're not going to be able to do it. And I said, yes, please. And of course, the person in front of me was first. And then they had somebody else who had been there already. So I was third in line to get the epidural from the anesthesiologist. So I probably waited. He probably wasn't there. They said they were going to make him hurry because I was almost to the point where they wouldn't do it anymore. And I begged them, please don't make me do this anymore naturally, please. I begged. So, I have horrible back labor. My labors are always in my back. What I felt of Jackson's wasn't. He was just completely different. But both the other boys, back labor to hell. Horrible. Oh, I just remember how bad it hurts, and they want you to lay down to assess you, and you couldn't lay. I could not lay down in that bed. It hurt so bad. I needed to be up. Horrible. Anyways, so the anesthesiast came, and I was probably, I probably, by the time he was done in the epidural, it was probably about 3:15. And they let me sit there for, about 45 minutes, an hour, and then they checked me again. When they checked me, I was complete. About 4:30, I was complete, actually. 4:30 in the morning. I had gone into labor at midnight. But at 4:30, I was complete. And I was like, oh God, it's in the middle of the night. I'm going to have the on-call doctor. I was so upset. I wanted my doctor to deliver Nolan. And so she goes out, when they're complete, they go call the doctor, see what they want to do, check in. And she comes back about, 5 minutes later and just says, doctor, your doctor is coming in. She said, cross your legs, I'm coming in. So she said, I guess she lives right by the hospital, which you probably have to when you have that type of job. But she said she was, jumping in the shower super fast. She was coming in. And so she said, cross my legs and just let her labor down, is what she said. So they left the option to me. I could start pushing right now, or I can wait for her. And of course, I'm going to wait for her. And the longer you sit there in labor complete, the more the baby's going to come out by itself, and the less you're going to push anyways. So it's actually better that way. And I've done it both my labors that I had normal. So at the same time, as much as I could feel my legs from the epidural, crossed my legs, and or more like my ankles at the time, and waited. 4:30 to probably about 10 to 6. So I waited about an hour. 45 minutes, an hour. And at this point, I was like, I can't wait anymore. It hurts. This baby is coming. Like, it is coming. Now, my times might be off a little bit because I started pushing right before she got there, and I only pushed for maybe 15 minutes, maybe. It was very, very fast. They pulled the epidural like they did with my first son, so I could feel my pushing. I didn't have a mirror this time, but I did push him out in like 15 minutes. It was quick, and my doctor got there, and I am so glad my doctor got there, because if you talk to any of the nurses in the hospital, you will know that she is the one that everybody's scared of, because she's that strict. So she gets things done, and she gets them done the right way, and she doesn't let these nurses slack. So if you watched my birth video with Miles, you know that I had bleeding afterwards, and I was worried about bleeding afterwards with this one too, and I did. My IV had popped out of my arm while I was pushing, which meant no Pitocin to contract your uterus more, to shrink it down. I had blood that was filling up my uterus, and this is horrible, but my doctor was pretty much like elbow deep in me, because my uterus was so large from the baby, it wasn't going down. And she was like, she kept scooping the blood out of me. And I remember I have the video of me and in pain. Like, I was crying. Not crying because I had just had a baby. Crying because it hurt so bad of them trying to stop the bleeding. Now, they couldn't, I remember my doctor yelling at these nurses, you get that IV in her now. Like, now. Like, what is the problem? Why aren't you getting this IV in? It took 4 nurses and 1 IV specialist nurse to get an IV in me. They poked me 5 or 6 times in the arm, could not get it. And I'm like, seriously. I mean, I know that I'm a hard stick anyways, but it's like, I'm bleeding here. Give me the medicine that I need. they finally got me right in this wrist. And they braced my wrist back like this, so I could not move my hand. And how am I supposed to take care of a baby like this? They braced it back. They pricked me right in the wrist and got me right through a main vein artery, whatever is right there. And got the Pitocin going, which allowed the uterus to shrink back down faster, which made the pooling up of blood less, and the bleeding stopped. I had to have some sort of medicine through my IV to help the bleeding as well. I don't remember what it was. But thank goodness I didn't have to have the shot that I had after Miles. But they were very concerned about the size of my uterus afterwards because it was not shrinking back down. And they were very concerned about my blood levels because I had lost so much blood. I didn't have to have a transfusion. Oh, my baby's waking up. I didn't have to have any sort of transfusion or anything. They left me in the labor room till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a very long time to be left in the labor room. Normally they move you out of there as fast as possible and get you into postpartum, because most of the time they need that other room. However, my doctor had specifically said leave her here until my vitals were so-and-so and they were stable, because the labor and delivery nurses are more experienced, more detail-oriented, and more on the ball, I guess, than the postpartum nurses. They're more of they just do a lot of checking, and they're a lot more lax, and they just don't know as much, my doctor said. So she said, I'm keeping you over here. I don't care what they need this room for. You're staying over here until, I got so-and-so better. So that's what happened. I stayed there till about 2, which was gross because the room was disgusting from having labor and all my bleeding. People came to visit me, and the floors were just disgusting. They brought somebody in to, wipe down some of the floors because, it had to have been a biohazard to have people walking around on, bloody floors. I know that sounds so gross, but, if you're watching this to hear about labor, there you go. Oh, Bubba's hungry. Okay, I'll find a place to stop. So then they moved me into my postpartum room, and I went home the next evening. So I spent one night in there. I spent 2 nights in there, and I went home the next morning. Longer than I did with Miles, and it was only because I had complications, really. But we went home. My mom had Miles for a couple days, which allowed us to just relax with Nolan. And that's that. That was my delivery with him. So now you know the delivery with all of my boys. And Jackson was by far the different one with his C-section and refusing to come out on his own, and my constant contractions and just so much. But my babies were basically 8.5, basically 9.5, and 10 pounds. Miles was basically 9, Nolan was 8, 9.5, and Jackson was 10. If I have another baby, it will probably be 10.5, because that's just the way my patterns go. So I'm going to find a place here to pull over and feed the baby. We are probably about 40 minutes from home. I can't wait. Alright, you guys have a good one, and I'll talk to you later.